Hi, this is Mike Masterson. I'm an automation specialist with the Reynolds Company, and today we're going to be talking about using integrated architecture builder for network design. Our presenters today are going to be myself, Brian McKeska, an automation specialist out of Houston, and we also have Joe Belashki here also, who is the one who's having all the technical difficulties. So I don't know if we're going to be actually talking to him today or not. And just to let you know, we are going to be recording this, so you will be able to go back and review it. And I want to make you aware of some upcoming events we have. Our users group for August is going to be scalable computing and the Rockwell's new Edge Gateway. We're going to be talking about that. Tomorrow for our Tech Talks, we're going to have In-Hand Networks talking about their temperature reading kiosk. On Wednesday, July 29th, we're going to look at, I believe Brandon and Joe are going to teach us all about basic Stratix 5700 setup and smart port setup. And then In-Hand Networks will join us again next week on the 30th to talk about their industrial cellular routers. So, using integrated architecture for network design. Quite a few of us know how to use it to create bills of material on the hardware and do simple networks. But how do we use it and get to this CPWE drawing with lots of detail? It's a large encompassing network, lots of different pathways, lots of different protocols are being used. Brian and I today are going to show you some of the tricks and tips on how to utilize IAB to get this type of design detail. Now, for those of you who don't know what integrated architecture builder is, if you have ever worked with any of your distributor specialists, this is a tool we use all the time to lay out hardware and networks to provide to our customers. This is a free software. Anybody can use it. In fact, as specialists, I would say all my specialist partners would tell you, we want you to use it because that means less work for us. Anytime there's less work for us, it's always a good thing. So we're going to be using this tool, and just to let you know, it can be downloaded if you haven't downloaded it, it can be downloaded at this website. And if you do have any questions on where to find it or the applications, I just want to let you know, after you download it, reach out to your local distributor specialist. We're all willing to be able to walk you through some of this, point you to the labs, and get you up to speed so you're proficient on this software. Now with that, I'm going to cut out here and we're going to take a look at integrated architecture builder. I happen to have a design here. This is something you typically see. I have a control logic system with a remote IO rack, and some Flex 5000 hanging off of it, and also a compact Logix with also some Flex 5000 IO. Currently, this is a lot of people can get up to this level on their design, and it's great for laying out hardware. It makes sure you do not miss things like the terminal blocks for the IO cards. It gives you a lot of reminders. Now, we're not going into the design of the hardware, but we are more than willing to come back or sit down with you on an individual basis and show you how we came up with this bill of materials. I want to come up with a network infrastructure that this can sit on. Now, with our IAB, we have different tabs I can take a look at, and I'm going to go down here to the bottom and take a look at the network tab. You can see the two systems I set up. I have a control logic system where the remote IO is sitting on a ring, and also a compact logic system with remote IO on a ring. So, but they are not incorporated into the plant network. I'm going to show you how to create the plant network. I'm going to come up here where we have links to where we can add like new hardware if I want to add a new control logics outside of using a wizard. But we also have new network. I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a Ethernet network. I'm going to use our converged plant-wide Ethernet design layout. That's going to give me the zones from the enterprise zone all the way down to the access zone level for the hardware. So I'm going to pick this, and you can see the CPW design where we have the enterprise zone, that's the business network, the DMZ, this is where the firewall sit and is directing the traffic between the business network and our OT network. And then the industrial zone and the cell zone where our controllers are. The industrial zone also will include like our HMI servers and so forth up here. So at this screen, I get to pick what do we want to show on the network. I'm going to show the enterprise zone. I'm going to show the DMZ with the firewall and the level 3 site operations. Now, when you're laying out a network, the first thing you know is how do you want the network set up? What are your zones of automation? You have to have that in mind to successfully create the network. In this case, I'm going to create 3 zones, and these zones are going to be down here at the level 1 area. I'm going to create 3 different zones of automation and say OK. Now we get to take a look at the products used in this area. I'm going to start the enterprise zone. There's nothing really here to choose. This is the business network. I'm not really designing anything for the business network, but we know that it exists. Every customer is going to have these demarcation point, so we just want it to be represented. Same thing with the DMZ. I can look here now, I can go start setting up IP addresses and subnets, but we're not really concerned. We're trying to get the network architecture right now. Then I can come to the firewalls, and you can come here and actually select different protocols that you need to utilize for your networks. If you want to, now, because a lot of times we're not actually specifying the firewall. The corporate IT department is doing that, but we know the firewall is going to be there. What we can do here is actually pick the protocols we know this firewall, the switches off the firewall need to support in our applications. So in this case, I'm just going to pick FlexLinks just for fun to make sure that's one of the protocols that are being used. And on the resiliency protocol, that's what we're using for redundancy at this level. I'm going to leave it at the default high-speed router protocol. That's a real common protocol used at this particular layer, so we're going to keep it there. Nice thing about it, if you let your cursor hang over it, it gives you a good definition of what those protocols are. So you can get a lot of information. I'm going to leave it at the HSRP protocol for right now. So we're going to come off the DMZ. I'm going to leave the switch as it is. But again, if you take a look, if we need specific protocols to be supported, like let's say a timestamp, we can check that, and we will know that we need to switch whatever switching apparatus is there needs to support that protocol. Again, this is not, a lot of times the Rockwell Stratix product is not playing in this neighborhood. This is a lot of times where you're seeing an HP or a Cisco or one of those products are going to be residing in this area. So again, we're just defining the protocols we need to support there. So I'm going to say go OK there. Now we're getting to areas that we can actually play in. So I'm going to come take a look at the industrial zone, the distribution switch. This is where all of our zones of automation are going to be pointed at. So by zones of automation, where our different controller groups are going to sit. So this is the good connector switch for it. So here I'm going to go ahead and pick, in this case, I'm going to make this a stack switch. Typically, you see this a lot in Cisco environments. This is going to allow our access switches to go to 2 different switches, so we get some resiliency from that. And in this case, I'm also going to pick FlexLinks as one of the protocols we know we need to support. Now, we could also do this as a ring if we wanted to, and by picking these other protocols. And in this case, you might also want to pick multiple protocols that the switches might have to support. So I'm going to pick ether channels. Now, if I was to pick something that wasn't supported by this Cisco switch, it would be grayed out. It would disappear. It wouldn't allow me to select it. So in this case, I'm going to pick the 24 port all SFP switch because I'm going to be wanting to use fiber as my media to the access switches. I will say okay there. Then I can come down to the actual zones of automation and pick and configure the switches there. So in this case, I'm going to use FlexLinks as my connection. In this case, I also want it to be able to support DLR. As you notice, it starts taking away switches that I can pick. And let's also, just for grins, we'll make this a NAT switch too. So again, it narrows down my choice of switches as I pick these different protocols. I'm going to go ahead and leave this 1783 BMS 10 CGN as my network of choice. I'm going to say okay. And now I'm going to finish. And what you will see, it's given us our enterprise zone up here, our DMZ where our firewalls are sitting, our layer 3 routers, and our distribution switch here. This is the network where our factory talk could be residing, or our historian. And then we have our individual zones of automation. There, again, if you remember at the start, we picked 3 different zones at that time. So one thing that's very important when you start taking a look at these different areas, quite often it's very important to name your switches as you go along and start laying this stuff out. So I'm going to go to cell area 1, and I'm going to rename this particular switch zone 1. Then I will go to cell area 2 and rename this zone 2. And I won't do the third one, but because I think you guys have gotten the idea of where I'm going this. Why I'm naming these specifically, because now I want to tie my hardware back to those particular switches. So I'm going to go to my control logic system, and we'll take it here. And by the way, I want to make everyone aware that Rockwell does screw things up eventually. On this, there are always going to be errors on this because they're constantly updating IAB. I'm going to remove one of these cards, and I'm going to pick an EN2TR, which is a 2-port comms card, and drag it in there. And you will notice it comes in as a 1756 EN4TR. Well, on paper, it is the correct thing, but they have the wrong graphic for it. This was done in the last week. So I will let you know if you come up here to About or the Help screen, you can actually send Rockwell notification that, yes, this card is screwed up, send them a screenshot, and they will generally have it fixed within a day or 2. So I just want to make you aware of this. So I have this control logics, and I have the controller here with an Ethernet port that's not being used. I have the control network for the ring for the remote IO hanging off of this, but I'm going to connect this to to a new Ethernet network. Oh, cell area 1 to switch zone 1. So I have made that connection. Now I'm going to go to my compact logics, Come to the switch. Now, I did have a choice. I have this configured not for DLR, even though I have a DLR, but I'm using ETAP to connect to it. So I'm splitting the ports to 2 networks. I'm going to go ahead and connect it to Ethernet network, and I'm going to connect this to zone 2. So we can now come back to our network view. And by the way, when you get this, you can see my connection points there. I see my compact logics. I see my control logics. Then I can come up to the view. Let's go to the cell area. So I'm showing the hardware, the initial connection where my control logics is connecting to the switch and my compact logics is connecting to the switch. Now, what you're not seeing is the control network, which is in this case DLR. I can come back and take a look at that specific network, and I can pull that up and see it. So it is segmenting it away from the rest of the network, which actually for troubleshooting or the network design is actually works really well for me. So that's the basis, is how we can create a CPWE model and create this network in a very short amount of time and it's connecting all the boxes here. As you saw, there was just a bunch of clicking here to get this hardware. So the design strategy is to, a lot of times, any large networks, I will actually create my network first, especially if I know how many zones of automation they're going to be. Then I'll build the hardware around it. Or you can go and create your hardware, not attach it to your distribution switch, and then go back and create the network. This will give you a really concise network diagram. And the best part about it, it works. Now, I'm going to hand off to Brian, and we're going to go take a look at some of the troubleshooting and some of the tricks we might use in this type of application. And Brian, if you want to use my screen, fine, or otherwise, I'll give it up.
Oh, I can. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
I will share the screen. All right. So, based on what Mike talked about with Rockwell, it is a very good program, but it is being developed for new products all the time. So in the case of the EN4TR, it has actually already been fixed. You can see here that this is my EN2TR, and it does look now different than the EN4TR, and it does look correct. So that's just one of those things. If you find it, let them know. Normally they will have it fixed, and you'll run something called a current program updater, which is down, looks like this symbol. It'll run and fix your update all your product profiles and everything within IAB. And so I have my own network that was generated, and sometimes when you generate a network, it may come in a little jumbled like this. So there are some pretty quick tools to help you kind of spread it out and connect it how you see fit. So one is always try to right click, and you can see what options are available if you're kind of stuck. So one thing you'll notice is the scaling on everything may be a little different if there's potentially if it's taking up too much area within the area that you give it. So if this was down here, the scale might actually get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you might not be able to see anything you're working with unless you start zooming in with your slider button up at the very, very top. So one option that they've given in your right click menu is maximizing zone scale, and it will make it a little bit bigger, or as big as it can make it within the view to come in line with everything else on that page. The other thing is, you see it is all jumbled up, and there's actually a ring in here with multiple remote IOs, multiple HMIs, a switch, and a compact Logix 5000. So you can auto distribute all these items within that zone or within that cell or zone, and it will break it out for you. Now the paths may be a little weird, and you can go in and change these pretty quick just by selecting the different connect mode versus the select mode, and bring them in line to where you're not crossing over each other on your device level ring that you have right now. And the other thing is, if you happen to, let's see, if you hold shift down, you can also momentarily view that connect mode as well. So if you just have to do something real quick and you don't want to fully switch into your connect mode, then you can just hold down shift and move anything you see fit that may need to be adjusted. Also on this, Mike mentioned that there's two different ways to connect some of our components. In this case, I'm going to show you on the Compact Logix 5000. It can do device level ring, or it can do dual IP to where you actually have, typically we use it to where one IP will go down into an IO network and the other will go up to either a switch and into level 3 or a access switch that ties into your distribution switches. So within the hardware menu at the very bottom tab, and I've already got my proper Compact Logix 5000 selected, you can modify set the Ethernet IP port mode to either device level ring or multiple IP addresses. So currently I have it connected in device level ring. So if I change it to multiple IP addresses, you'll see that now I have an ETAP on my screen. Try to get the ring. Here. Hold shift, move it over. Now you can see that ETAP. Now if I move it back and set it back to device level ring, it'll end up changing it back to your device level ring network. And also on this, your different UI options, the cool thing about IAB is you can set a lot of different parameters to help estimate what your capacity of your network might be. So on this, it defaults to different cable lengths and cable types. So everything's shown here right now within this section is all fiber. If you configure the access switch, you can see that this is fiber, multimode fiber, and it gives you your SFP down at the bottom. If you happen to say, I really want this on port 1, you really want to get super granular with this, you can actually just drag and drop, and it'll adjust it accordingly. It may, in that case, it changed it from a DLR to an ETAP because the only DLR ports available are 7 and 8. And it'll do it again, switch back. But it will help walk you through it and tell you if you're doing something wrong, either with a pop-up window or typically things will turn red if you're not able to do them. And what else do we have? Duplicating. So if you wanted to duplicate a few items on here, you can very, very quickly do that. And just by either control clicking to individually select all the items you want to duplicate, or you can drag a window, just like with most CAD programs, right click and duplicate. And then you can tell it how many you want, and it will try to fit it in the area that it's in. So if I wanted to duplicate those 2 remote IO racks twice, so that would give me a total of 4, it'll go ahead and do that. It actually only did 2, didn't it? Oh, it included the first one. So if I wanted 4, I would have had to Oh, it did actually do it. I guess I only ended up selecting one of them. Just move this over here, and it starts looking messy. I can do the same thing, auto distribute. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. It's one of those things and how you set it up, uh, and how much space you have, and with how it will actually look. Um, but one cool thing about all this, you can see your cable information. I'll go ahead and move some of this around so we can actually view it. There we go. So between this Ethernet cable between these two HMIs in the DLR network, now I can see my estimated packet uh, utilization on the Ethernet cable, sending and receiving. And it does this all the way around based on the setup that you have within your advanced communication details. So this little button up here at the top of the toolbar is your advanced communication details. And within here, you can assign your controllers to HMIs or your HMIs to certain controllers. I only have one in this project right now. Actually, I do have two. No, I only have one. And then on the IO devices, you can do the same thing. So remote IO, again, with HMIs, you can set your RPI based on your individual IOs. So if you have a lot of fast IO, you can put it in a remote IO rack and tell it, hey, this is fast IO. I'm doing it at 5 millisecond, 10 millisecond. And then you have another, say you have a tank farm that you're setting up and it's a lot of slow IO, then you can throw in some more DIs and say, my RPI might be 100 milliseconds or 750 milliseconds. And that will affect the utilization of your network, as we saw in the green hover tooltip that you see when you select the SIP and cable info. The other possibly helpful thing that when you're designing and you want to see a bunch of information on the screen, you can actually see which location, subnet, and IP address each remote IO, each HMI switch is actually on, and you'll see it up at the higher levels too. And everything we're talking about is not have to be in the cell area. This applies throughout all the way up the Purdue model or the CPWE that Mike was talking about earlier. Trying to think what else I had. Oh, under the advanced communication details, you get a lot of information. Typically, like I said earlier, red is bad, green is good, yellow is just precaution. So based on what you change, you could have it to where your Ethernet media utilization gets up to a point that you might want to either take a hard look at, did you put in the right RPI if you messed with them and didn't go by defaults, or other areas of the network, and maybe you have to break it out into 2 DLR networks or 2 star networks to help the utilization of either a switch or the actual media. And so just to show you an example of this right now, it's 10.2%. And if I go in here and just narrow all of my HMI number of tags down to where it's really not utilizing much, you'll see that percentage drop to 8.6. So just by increasing each HMI by 100 tags and 100 standard tags and 100 string tags roughly, I got 2% Ethernet media utilization on this entire network. And you'll also notice that I do actually have red showing here because I'm using the lowest level of Compact Logix 5000 controller, and I have a bunch of items connected to it. And so it's estimating based on what I've told it so far that I will not have enough memory and I will have to either swap it or change some of this over to another controller as well. And so that's fairly easy to do within the hardware menu. You can come in here and just say swap module, and then you can choose your other, in the same family, what other controller you're trying to use. So I can say the L320, go back to my network, it'll have updated here, and under advanced communication details, you now see that we're green on our memory. Another item on this, so a lot of times you may or may not want to see your cabling within your bill of materials. There are a couple of ways to go about this. One, and the absolute quickest way, is to actually just turn it off, and they've enabled this a few months back under option, IAB options. You can choose to exclude all of your Ethernet cabling from your BOMs. Now, if this is unchecked, there's still a way to exclude it by a method I'll show you in a second. But by far, this is the fastest to exclude it from all your BOMs, especially since you don't know if you need a 2-foot or 4-foot, Cat5 cable. You may not want to provide it in your BOM when you're doing this pretty consistently. One other option I will point out that is just kind of I found good practice or makes my life easier is to enable the manual navigation device list. And what that is, under the hardware menu, you can quickly just click this button up at the top. This is what button when you check the box, it will place this button right here. And when I check it, or when I click it after I've added my hardware here, it will auto navigate to the proper area so that I can quickly either add IO or add accessories to that individual product. So if I end up going to my control logics and I'm in compact logics under the device list and I click this, it'll go back to control logics and I can change things in that area. Going back to the network, the other way to adjust how your cabling may or may not show up in the bill of materials, you can configure your default switch cabling for your switch and for overall. So just for this switch, I can say I want a customer supplied copper cable, and that will not provide a line item within my BOM when I export it for viewing and ordering at a later date. You can also change your cable links. That is where you would change your cable links. Didn't mean to double click there. And so in the distribution switch, you can do the same thing. If it'll pull it up, there it goes. So you can select by each port what type of media you want, what length it might be, what if it's, in this case, it's fiber, so you can choose your different fiber options that you may have, be it SC, ST, LC, and so on and so forth. Same with the copper cabling. Don't know. Mike, do you know what micro is? I actually don't.
What's that?
There's a micro connector for, is that the M12?
I would assume
yeah, it is
so.
the M12.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So if you have a bulkhead connector, you can also choose that in here to go from RJ45 to bulkhead.
That's for your IP67 type applications.
Yep. And if you want to apply the default to all ports, so if I just wanted copper across this entire distribution switch, you could say apply defaults to all ports, and then basically go through the menu and select yes, and it will have changed all of the default ports to match what you had on the initial screen here. And did I miss anything? Oh, no. Vlans. So the big thing, if you're doing a more of a design like what Mike showed earlier, we have multiple cell areas, and you want to make sure that everything is laid out properly, is you don't want to go through and check that every single item has the right subnet. You can go to your manage VLAN filtering here, and you can say, I just want to view VLAN 4. I want to gray out anything that's not on this VLAN that I've selected, and I want to shade everything within this VLAN a certain color. In this case, it's going to be blue. And so now you can zoom out and very quickly see, based on that shading, what is all included in that VLAN. And you can know right away whether or not, okay, I'm good, or okay, I need a, this blue HMI may be over here in a different cell area. I've set it wrong. What does it actually belong to? And it's a pretty quick way to help check yourself and your design.
Hey, Brian, can you show us where the labs are located if someone wanted to do some
Sure.
self-training?
And so there are multiple labs, multiple sample configurations within IAB under the help menu. There's labs, quick starts, videos, sample configurations. And so the videos and the sample configurations are all installed when you install the software or if you update the software. And under the contact us, that's where Mike mentioned you can email support and tell them, hey, I have an issue. Is this a bug? Is it not a bug? Sometimes they'll just send a email back saying we're working on it. It'll be updated in the next release. And sometimes they may ask you for additional information. But let's just go under labs for a quick second. So the quick starts and the other items look like this as well. And you can also just drop down once you're finally in this screen. And so what we're talking about today is using the converged plant-wide Ethernet concepts in IAB. You can see that there's a video on it, as well as a PDF that you can walk through. And once you double click it, it will open up actually I already had it open, PDF. And so this is the PDF that we were talking about today. And it walks you through. There's appendix within this particular lab that you can go through if you're having a specific issue or want to see some of the more common issues that people have had and how to rectify those.
Okay. With that, I guess we'll go ahead and ask for if there's any questions out there. But we acknowledge that this is like drinking water out of a fire hose. We hit you with a lot of information today, especially during this time. If you have some downtime and want to do a more in-depth dive into the network's applications, maybe you saw something today that you're interested in or didn't know we could do, please reach out to your automation specialist, because we would love to sit down with you. This stuff works well with Microsoft Teams or a Zoom call. We can walk you through a lot of these questions you might have. All the specialists are pretty much super users on the software, and we love getting people up to speed on it with it, because it just makes you putting together a Rockwell system, it just makes you more proficient doing it. And let's see, any questions?
Not that I see.
Okay. With that, I guess we'll say thank you for your time. We do appreciate it, and we look forward to probably talking to you tomorrow. We have In Hand Networks doing our Tech Talk for tomorrow. Again, thank you very much.